My name's Amata, and in this Red Gaming Tech video I am here with a little bit of a different perspective on the whole loot crate and microtransaction conversation. Obviously this conversation has been very loud and very present the last week or so, with the pre-release and of course official release of Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now I'm not going to go into detail in that particular game and what happened. If you somehow missed it, which I really doubt, you would have to be living on Mars or something to have missed it. There are numerous videos on this very channel which will go into detail, so I'm not going to go through all of that. However, there has been an analyst who has very much adopted a contrarian and controversial stance, and this is a fellow by the name of Evan Wingren, who is a financial analyst for KeyBanc Capital Markets. And he said in a note to investors that basically he thinks that we're making too much of a big deal about this whole microtransaction situation. And he basically said, quote, "We view the suspension of microtransactions in the near term as a transitory risk." And basically he thinks that we're overreacting about this whole situation due to the cost and the sort of cost per hour played versus that of TV and films. And he went on to say that gamers aren't overcharged, they're undercharged. Now, I'm not going to go into my opinions on what he said just yet. I'm going to focus on what he said and then we can go from there. He said, quote, "Gamers aren't overcharged, they're undercharged, and we're gamers. The saga has been a perfect storm for overreaction as it involves EA, Star Wars, Reddit, and certain purist gaming journalist outlets who dislike microtransactions." Just a quick aside, I don't think disliking being nickel and dimed at every possible opportunity to the point where it interferes with gameplay and ruins the core experience makes me a purist, but, you know, whatever, use that term if it makes you feel better, if it makes you sleep at night, that's cool with me. But, you know, back to the quotes, I said I wouldn't do this, damn. He was, however, back to the topic, very aware that he thinks at least there's a, quote, slightly higher probability that the game, that being Star Wars Battlefront 2, of course, will not meet its 13 million sales unit forecast. So his main point, as I said, is basically how games are basically cheaper in comparison to films and TV, in comparison to what you pay and the value you get out of it in terms of time. He estimated a cost per hour for a typical Star Wars Battlefront 2 player. He said that if you spent $60 for the game, an additional $20 per month for loot microtransaction boxes, and played 2.5 hours a day for a year, comes to roughly 40 cents per hour of entertainment. This is compared to his estimation of 60 cents to 65 cents per hour for television, that's paid television obviously, and 80 cents per hour for a movie rental, and of course $3 per hour for a film that you see in a theatre. And he went on to say, quote, "If you take a step back and look at the data, an hour of video game content is still one of the cheapest forms of entertainment. Quantitative analysis shows that video game publishers are actually charging gamers at a relatively inexpensive rate and should probably raise prices." Now, you might wonder, okay, are we talking like $5, $10? Well, no. He's actually thinking way more than that, to be honest. And he's not wrong in terms of, like, you know, especially if you're talking like a very lengthy experience, like, say, Skyrim. If you bought that at launch and you're still playing it now, you've more than got your money's worth. But it's kind of the same for, like, a DVD or whatever. You keep watching it, you still own it, you still getting more value. But I don't really think it's fair to look at it as $60 and X amount played, because he's forgetting, maybe conveniently, maybe not, several facts that I thought are definitely worth mentioning. And that is, of course, DLC, season passes, pre-order bonuses, and merchandise. So I don't know if the split of merchandise, if any, goes to the developer or what, but I would assume so. But again, this is purely from like I'm not a developer, I will never be a developer perspective. But even if you only talk publisher, the publisher obviously gets a cut of, like, you know, X game t-shirts and hats and bloody Crocs for all I know. And obviously season passes are basically mandatory for some reason for AAA games. And of course, so is DLC. Now, obviously, DLC costs money to make, but that is assuming you haven't had the case of, as has happened several times, of it just being content that was cut from the main game and then launched on day one. So let's assume it's not that case. Obviously, that DLC costs money to make, but it obviously didn't cost nearly as much as the main game. The engine is built, that sort of thing. All you're really paying for there is the man hours required to build it. So even if you ignore that because, you know, that's not the base game and it's extra and takes extra development time, you still got season passes, and you, again, still have pre-order bonuses and deluxe editions. I did actually forget deluxe editions, add that to my little list. Deluxe editions, and of course merchandise. You know, as with films, it's not just about the film. You've got, you know, merchandise and re-releases on DVD and Netflix or whatever. So I don't agree that prices should be raised because gamers are already being asked for a lot of money. Like, one of the big sticking points for Star Wars Battlefront 1, for instance, was the fact that for the complete experience, you were having to pay like $110 because arguably the season pass was required to actually get the full experience. So I don't really agree with his assessment, but, you know, this is a different perspective. Obviously, you've been hearing my perspective for the last week or so, and you're very much aware of my opinions on this whole subject. But, you know, a small price rise, yeah, maybe, but not like the $10, $20, $30, $40 even that he's suggesting for different companies. You know, again, gamers are already having to pay a lot, and the fact that, you know, microtransactions as well are becoming increasingly widespread, despite the fact that they're horrible and terrible. And this is a free-to-play game, of course. You know, recently we had that article about Ubisoft, where basically it was well, I don't want to say gloating, but extremely high sales figures for microtransactions, and the TLDR is that microtransaction revenue beats digital sales for Ubisoft for the first time. This was on November the 8th this year, so just a couple of weeks ago. So this is how much money is being made through microtransactions, and then you don't get to say that we aren't overcharged in this regard. So, you know, I disagree, but obviously you are free. You are free. You know, you are free. There we go. You are free to disagree with me, of course, and agree with this chap here. I will include a link to the source in the description below this video if you want to go check it out. Do let me know your thoughts and opinions, guys. Your thoughts are always appreciated, as is your support, so do remember to check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/redgamingtech, and of course, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Thanks again, bye-bye.